Hey guys, welcome back to the Lou Perez Podcast. My name is Lou Perez. If you'd like to support my work, please head over to thelouperez.locals.com and join the Lou Perez community. You'll get to listen to my podcasts and watch my sketch comedy videos before I release them to the rest of the world. And you'll also have access to exclusive content for members only. And if you're looking for another way you can support me, you can do so by supporting my sponsors. Black Organic Cold Brew. Just head over to www.blvckbrew.com and use promo code LOU for free shipping. And if you're into CBD products, please check out Paloma Verde CBD. Head over to palomaverdecbd.com and use promo code LOU for 25% off purchases over $75. All right, here we go. I'm so happy to be joined by my friend, Kira Davis, host of the podcast, Just Listen to Yourself. She's a journalist as well. You can find a lot of her stuff in Red State, I believe.
Yep. I'm editor-at-large for Red State.
Yeah, and we actually have been talking for a little while. And one of the things that I want to talk about, I just found out that Kira is from up north in Canada.
Yeah.
And something that I've been trying to figure out is, what is it about Canada that you guys seem to produce all of my favorite comedians?
Who?
Kids in the Hall.
Yeah.
Absolutely love them.
Oh my gosh,
I'm a child of the 80s and 90s, so Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
Norm Macdonald is fantastic. And John Candy.
Yeah.
Who else? There was just like I'm always surprised when I find out, oh, yes. Damn it, he's Canadian too.
Like Catherine O'Hara, Eugene Levy. Yes. Well, there was a time, I'm not sure what's going on up there right now because I haven't been a Canadian for quite a while. But when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, there was 70s, 80s, and 90s was like heyday for Canadian comedy. That's how you got SNL. It came out of SCTV, which is a Toronto group. Lorne Michaels went up to Canada as you have Canada to thank for SNL, really. But excuse me, there was a time when the arts were really thriving in Canada. I have a couple of theories on this, and I don't know how accurate they are. They are based on nothing but my own thoughts. Would you like to hear them?
Yes, hit me.
One theory is that during the 70s and the late 60s and 70s, there were a lot of Americans who were crossing the border to travel through Canada to avoid the draft. My dad was one of them, and he also happened to be an artist. And that's how he met my mom, and that's how I got here. But I think a lot of those people ended up settling in like artistic communities in Canada because that's where they were safest. Like if you couldn't get green cards or papers, you ended up being in the arts community. And I think so there's a big American comedy influence in Canada because of that. Like artistic, just generally speaking, but even more so. I do believe that you could find some connections with how Lorne Michaels knew all those amazing people, Andrea Martin and all those amazing people, Martin Short. And so I think there was that, but I think the other thing is that all of the people that you've mentioned that you like Norm Macdonald, Kids in the Hall, John Candy, they're working class people. And at that time in Canada, this was a big working class country. Now we think of Canadians as sort of clean and nice, and they don't litter, and they are very proper and very big on whatever, like diversity and the social justice movement and multicultural. That's like, we have this pristine image of Canada as Americans, but Canada is filled with working class people. There are a couple, and usually you find the quote culture in the cities, and then you have the rural area of your nation, and most of Canada is rural. There's only a few big cities. So these are all working class people who learned. We were talking about Norm Macdonald, Lou, you and I, on my show. And I was saying Norm learned comedy from sitting in his father's shed and listening to his father and his fisherman buddies one-up each other all night, every night. Working class, struggle. That's where a lot of these people came from. So those are my two unscientific theories about why there's so much good Canadian comedy. And Kids in the Hall is, to me, that is the penultimate comedy troupe right there.
Yeah, I didn't realize how big of an influence they had on me until I got a little more gray in my hair, and I started looking back on my life and my comedy career, and I'm like, oh, that's like, this sketch could have been a Kids in the Hall sketch, or, you know, this bit could have been a Kids in the Hall, Kids in the Hall bit. You know, I'm going to hit you with an unscientific idea that just came my way. You know, you talk about the comedians coming out of the working class. So, you know, with that is a culture of hanging out with your buddies over drinks, making people laugh. And, you know, sort of you have this, you know, this culture of joking that happens, you know, there. I wonder if a lot of people, the first time that they make anybody laugh, especially in the States nowadays, is in their improv class. Like, I wonder how many people have lost, you know, sort of the, you know, that working class sort of, you know, culture where it's sort of like, hey, I don't really have any friends. I haven't really made anybody laugh ever. I'm going to go try comedy. And here I am trying comedy for the first time.
That is such an interesting observation. And I feel like I never even thought about that, but maybe you're right, Lou. Like, part of it, if I look at, so my son just turned 19 yesterday. So if I look at his generation and like the way that I hear, like, me and his dad, okay, if me and his dad are sitting around and we're bullshitting, just me and dad, and he walks in, he'll be like, you can't say that. You can't say that. Like, a lot of the ways that my husband and I just chat as adult peers and friends are offensive to my son's generation. And it makes me wonder if he's not having these conversations with, maybe, I believe he is, but maybe there is some sort of unspoken boundary that a lot of younger people coming up now have, where they don't get to have those experiences of sitting around and bantering and one-upping each other and pushing it way too far and being way too much of a jerk about it. Like, all of that helps you develop your boundaries, your personalities, your sense of humor. And maybe there is just a whole generation of people that can't have those conversations right now because they're not free to have those conversations in public. There's always going to be someone going, you can't say that. You can't say that. Like, right. My son is always bitching at us.
Yeah. I remember when we were younger. I'm one of 5 boys, and growing up, I guess, like in the 80s and 90s, Andrew Dice Clay was a huge comedian.
Yes. So
my younger brothers used to parrot Andrew Dice Clay's nursery rhymes. So just imagine, like, you know, a 5-year-old kid, you know, doing his hickory dickory dock, but, you know, his version, you know, the Andrew Dice Clay version. Yeah. And that used to crack people up. You know, people would be like, oh my God, that's hilarious. And I remember the first joke that I can remember telling, it was to a bunch of older boys. And it was a dirty joke that I had just kind of made up with, I guess I had cobbled together dirty words and, like, you know, which I guess was kind of just like sounds to me, you know, it's like, let me just cobble this together and spit it out. And I remember making the older boys laugh when we did that. And, you know, I don't want to turn into, you know, this like, oh, but, you know, back in my day, and, you know, kids these days don't know.
Yeah, but Lou, that's what happens when you get old. Just embrace it. Okay, just embrace.
Okay, I'm just gonna. But I remember. So like throughout my life, it's always been me goofing with my friends and us making each other laugh. Yeah. And what, you know, I hope that kids growing up today have the experience that I had when I was in middle school, and it was me, my friend Anthony, and my friend Mark, and I think it was just the 3 of us, and we had gone to a Chinese takeout place. Anthony always used to get boneless spare ribs, and then I got pork fried rice. So I don't remember what Mark got, but we're walking around, and I'm shoveling pork fried rice, you know, into my mouth. We're walking around our neighborhood, and these guys start making me laugh so hard, right, that I start choking on this pork fried rice. Then I'm laughing so hard where I feel like my nose is all stuffed. I have to blow my nose, and me being a gross 12-year-old boy, I take my shirt and blow my nose on my shirt, and what comes out? Snot and pork fried rice, and it's there, and that is gross and hilarious. But it was like I was laughing, like, you know, the amount of times that I've laughed that hard where it's physically painful to me.
Yes.
It's like I really hope people are having those experiences. I so desperately hope people are laughing like that, especially young kids.
I don't feel like enough are. Like, thank you to this stupid pandemic, I don't feel like enough people are having those experiences. And like, there's a lot of people, like, now that we're starting to reopen and we're getting vaccines and stuff, I feel like there's a lot of people, Lou, out there who are like, you know, I never really wanted to be out and doing stuff in the first place. Like, there are people who are perfectly fine with keeping all of us locked down because they feel more secure having an excuse to stay in and not. I just saw. I
didn't watch the Oscars, but apparently one of the Oscar
nobody
winners.
did. Yeah.
Yeah. Who are those 9 million people? But apparently one of the Oscar winners. Somebody quoted her on Twitter, and she was like, "Yeah, I really enjoy staying in bed, and with the lockdown, I got to stay in bed or in my home 24 hours a day. This was great for me." And this person had like promoted it as like, you know, story of my life, or that's, you know, that's what I'm after. And I'm just thinking like, oh my God, I can't, I'm a little speechless, I guess, you know?
Yeah, no, it's like, I have noticed that, or like as a writer, who's in, you know, journalism, I obviously monitor like a lot of other op-ed writers, and there's just this slew of articles coming out from the op-ed writers that are like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to get back to normal, or they're articles titled like the fear of returning to normal, or the fear of the end of the pandemic. Like, it's all about fear. Like, these people have been living in fear for 18 months now, and now they can't, like, the fear is addictive. They can't give it up. So now they're writing articles about how scary it is to get back out there in public. Like, are you kidding me? First of all, I've never stopped doing anything this whole time. You know, I've been, I mean, except for what the government's making me stop, like stop sending my kids to school. But like, I've been traveling as much as I can, wherever there are places to go. I've been there. I've been visiting people, having parties. I live in a neighborhood that's in the suburbs, and people are probably pretty much doing what they want out here. Even a lot of my local watering holes have stayed open, just like you go in the back through the kitchen, like there's a speakeasy style. So I haven't stopped doing anything, but there are so many people out there who are like, yeah, I think I'm scared, and we should all be scared, and we should all be fearful of each other. Yeah, like, I feel like there's this whole new generation of people who aren't having those experiences with each other. They're laughing online at each other, but they don't know what it's like to be sitting in a room with your friends and laughing at a fart that's so funny that you like puke rice out of your nose. A lot of people are not having those experiences. There's a difference between entertaining each other in a chat room and being physically with a group of people and feeling that energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And something that I noticed too, there are people who are treating, you know, April 2021 the same way March 2020 was being treated.
Yeah.
And you know, I remember hearing this one person who was like, you know, we had a baby, and, you know, my mom and dad, the baby's grandparents, haven't met the baby yet in a year.
That's heartbreaking.
So heartbreaking. And you know, as you know, I had my wife and I, we had our son in March of 2020, and that was at the height of this insanity. We didn't know what was going on. We were quarantined.
And you were in New York.
Yeah. So we were quarantined for like 2 months without, you know, my parents or her parents meeting, which, you know, I'm just a new dad. I'm not a grandparent yet, but man, that you know, that was such torture.
Me. Yeah. As a parent, that would crush me. Yeah.
Such torture. Right. But then what happens is you learn more about, you know, this disease. You start to figure out, well, if you're quarantined from, if you're quarantined, you're not, you know, going out meeting people, and you've been doing it for like a month and you don't have any symptoms, you might be, well, it's probably safe to go meet the other person or the other
Right.
family that's been doing the
Quarantine,
same thing. And then let's, move a few months later, you have a test. You have a test that, you can get the results in 2 days. And then you have a test, you get a rapid result in 15 minutes. You could take tests to find out whether or not it's safe for you.
Yeah.
And when I hear these people talking about, remaining, separated from especially loved ones, I'm like, no.
In April.
Yeah, you're trying to find an excuse not to see
Agree.
them. And if you listen to the science is telling you, you don't have an excuse. That baby should be in, their grandparents' arms right now. I have seen this happen all year long where people are having kids and their parents can't see them. And sometimes it's the parents' choice, which you could not keep me away from a brand new grandbaby, especially like a first. But sometimes it's like, it's the parents' choice. And sometimes it's the grandparents' choice. And sometimes it's the parents' choice. And I've seen more than one person go, oh, I don't want anyone around my newborn baby. But I'm like, that's not science. Like, your baby is fine. Your baby is going to be fine. And I'm not suggesting you take your baby to a concert and pass the baby around, but your mom and dad should probably be okay. And I think, Lou, about all of the people who have died in isolation this year from not COVID. Like, we seem to have decided that COVID is the only thing that we can't die from. And then everything else, no one cares about, cancer or the regular flu or whatever. And there are a lot of people, like, I was talking to a lady on my locals page, which I'll plug that. It's davisnation.locals.com if you want to join me over there. But there was a subscriber on my locals page, and I think she was saying, like, my uncle is isolated and he's like 99 and he hasn't seen anybody in a year, and he's going like, what is the point of this? Like, what am I sparing myself from? I have days, months to live. Why am I living in isolation for a disease when I don't have the kind of time to quarantine? I want to see people. I want to live. How many of those people have died alone this year of not COVID, for something that is, none of this makes sense to me, Lou. And probably the way I'm talking now, you can tell that I'm struggling with the logic of it all. And I'm a very logical person. And I think that's I've struggled with the most over the last year. Like, people have thrown away logic and forethought. You have a baby, you have this new wonderful creature, and there's nothing more important than family. Like, make arrangements to share this beautiful creature with your family. Right.
COVID is dangerous if you're, of a certain age and have certain health issues, but it's not so dangerous that we needed to stop living our lives with each other. I just think this is, the brave are the people who are out there just trying to be normal.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think, I don't know if I told you, but I'm leaving New York.
Yes, congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome to suburbia.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I'm leaving New York after the census was taken. So me and my family aren't counted.
You're a part of it. Yeah.
But in I guess in 10 years from now, we will not be present in New York. And something happened. New York has changed so much over the past year. And, a part of me, it was thinking like, am I going to be bummed that I'm, leaving New York and leaving this, stuff behind. But last night I drove back from our house in Jersey, where we're now living, and drove back to our apartment. And I was like, you know what? Why don't I go and eat at what was once, one of our favorite restaurants in the city. So I'm not gonna say who they were, but I went and I ate at the restaurant, and it was just as expensive as it always was, but man, it was mediocre. And it was sort of like, okay, I'm definitely ready to leave. I'm definitely ready to go on, to leave this behind. The literal bad taste left in my mouth. And have you, I know you've thought about, you've talked about, at least on Twitter, California and getting out of there. And you have a lot of people, who have been leaving.
Yeah.
Where are you on that?
We're here. We don't have any. Every Californian though these days has a contingency plan, and we have a contingency plan like everybody else. Like, it's so weird in the last year, and this is literally, and I really mean this. This is something that has cropped up in the last year because our COVID policy has just been atrocious. Like, the goalposts have shifted. There's like nothing to hang on to as far as real information. We're recalling the governor. That's how bad it is. We've recalled one governor in the history of California, I think two. And so this is how bad things are. We're actually going to recall this guy. And everybody is so sick of California, and it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on. You can talk to Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Everybody is going, if they're not already gone, you're sitting on Zillow every night, like dreaming about what your $900,000 could get you in Iowa or in Ohio or even somewhere on the East Coast. And so my husband and I do have a contingency plan like everybody else does, but no, we moved here from Gary, Indiana 12 years ago. And my husband was born and raised in Gary, and that's the hood. And for him, the suburban life was like, that's the American dream. And it's what he has now. For me, I grew up in rural Canada. I split my time between rural Canada and the inner city of Washington, D.C., where my dad lived. And but I always loved the city. I felt I view myself as more of a metropolitan person. Mm-hmm. I loved spending a lot of my growing up years in DC and having access to the metro. Back then it was still really nice. And I would prefer to live in the city. But if I'm going to live in California, I'm living in the suburbs, because the cities I have access to are LA, San Francisco, and San Diego, and they are all completely overrun. Up until last year, Lou, I was looking for an apartment in LA so that I could just commute, so when I had to do business there or whatever, I could stay overnight. And the whole city's been taken over by homeless people. So I guess that's the long way of saying, no, we have no plans to move. I wish people would stop asking me when we're going to leave. Like, not you, Lou, but there's a lot of people, like, every time I complain on Twitter, people be like, you should just leave. What are you staying there for? Only idiots are left there. And it's like, I have a family here, people. I have a life. I'm not like, I don't just have the liberty to stand up and leave. And I have a husband who has a job here and works here. And he is, I'm sorry if I'm going to get your podcast trouble, Lou, but he's the head of our household. And we don't move until he believes that this is a good choice for our family. So until then, I'm here in California. There's a lot to dislike about California, but there's a lot to love about California. And the suburbs, Lou, this is why I'm so interested to hear your suburban experiences, because the suburbs are so different in a way. There's the part of it that is annoying, like the cookie cutter stuff and the PTA moms and yoga pants and Starbucks. And there's all of those cliches are true. But there's another part of the suburbs that you don't necessarily get in the city. And it can be a sense of community, a sense of building something for yourself instead of sitting in a building. You're growing, you own your own property. You're always thinking about improving it and building it and growing it and what it's going to mean to your kids. All that too. You're building more of a legacy, where in the city, you're more just enjoying the city. I know that was a long answer. I'm a talker. It's what I do for a living. Yeah. No, I have no plans to leave California right now. In fact, I wanted to run for governor, but my husband won't let me.
Well, if I could, I'll talk to your husband, because I think, I
want to make it sound like by the way, I want to say, like, my husband's not the boss of me, people. So if there's people listening to this, they're like, oh, she just said her husband's the head of the household and he won't let her run for governor. No, like, this requires a family approval if you're going to run for office. He doesn't want to do it. Therefore I cannot.
Sure. And something that, the people who are telling you, like, oh, just get out of it or just move. Like, you have planted deep roots where you are, just, for all the things that that you explained, like even just us moving from a 1-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
The amount of crap that we have, right?
Why?
Dude, why? And then the mover, we had some great guys, who moved. The amount that they were able to fit into this 10-foot U-Haul was incredible. And when I saw all that stuff in there, I was like, I should just set this stuff on fire. Like there's no, I'm going to have to unload all of this stuff. It's going to have to sit in the garage because we're doing renovation on the, on the place. And it's like, even just that, the act of moving is such a hassle and so stressful, where I could see why someone's like, nah, this is where I am. I don't care if the flood's coming. I can't move this shit. I gotta keep it here.
That's like, yes, it's a big proposition. There are a lot of people who like just move, but moving requires not just a lot of physical energy, but it costs a lot of funds. And you lived here in California, Lou, so almost everybody lives paycheck to paycheck around here. It's not too, even rich folks. It's just a matter of how much you want to spend. If you want to live in a nicer area, you're going to live paycheck to paycheck to live. You're going to live hefty paycheck to live in that hefty area. If you want to live in the hood, you're going to live tiny paycheck to live in the hood. Everybody's living paycheck to paycheck here. It's like a way of life. It's so expensive. Even if you think you're getting away with it, when tax season hits, the reality will set in. So the idea of pulling together, thousands of dollars for moving, first months and last months if I want to rent somewhere, or pulling together a loan to buy somewhere else. I mean, it's a lot to move. I know California, that it's the butt of the joke of the United States, and I get that we deserve to be, because we handle everything wrongly here. But I had the same experience. I've had this experience everywhere, Lou. I've lived everywhere in my life. I've lived on a tiny island in rural Canada. I've lived in the inner cities of Washington, D.C. I've lived in Nashville. I've lived in St. Louis on the north side there. So that's the hood. I've lived in Iowa. I've lived in Chicago. I've lived in Gary, Indiana. And then we moved out here to California. I've had suburban life and rural and urban, almost all of it, I would say. And I have found good people everywhere. Mm-hmm. I have found people worth knowing everywhere. There's no one has a lock on a-holes. Do you know what I mean? There's one area that has a lock on a-holes. I get that suburbia is like disappointing to some people, but city life is disappointing to some people too. And just like when we were in Gary, where that's a straight up hood. That is it's like per capita has the most homicides in the United States, I think, next to Chicago. Wow. And it's right next to Chicago, actually. And statistically on paper, you look at that and you say Gary looks scary. In fact, I think my husband told me
scary Indiana. Yeah.
Scary Gary. That's what my husband told me. His cousins from the south side of Chicago used to come to Gary and they'd be like, "This is Scary Gary." Like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. But from the outside, it's scary, right? It's the kind of place where TV shows come in and they shoot there, because it's like all shell. It looks like a war zone. So TV shows will come in there and film when they want to do like disaster movies and stuff. But in the city is filled with amazing, beautiful, wonderful people who are creative and business minded and good family people and fun and kind and generous and giving. All those people are there. You wouldn't see it driving into the city. You wouldn't know they're there, but they are. And it's the same here in California. I know we've got our homeless meth addicts, which are taking over the streets right now. And we have gross old Hollywood, and we have, all of the things about California that people find distasteful. But in this state also are very amazing people.
Yeah. When we lived in LA, there's always this like, which I think is just a fallacy. It's like, you could either love New York and hate LA, or love LA and hate New York.
Yeah.
And for us, like we just had a different life in LA, and we met some really amazing people in LA. So that made it, difficult, when we moved back to New York. And, as far like I've been a city kid my whole life, basically. And, my wife was like, you ready to, make this transition to the suburbs. And, what I found, in the same way that I described that restaurant last night that was just overpriced and mediocre, there are so many things telling me that you leaving is the best thing that you could possibly do. Apparently, there's a dude on our floor, the second floor, who's going through a midlife crisis, and he's a drummer. And I haven't heard his drumming, thank God, but I've smelled his weed, right? So this dude's like, 50 some odd years old and toking like he's back in college.
Wow.
Where it's like, dude, there are vaporizers now.
Right.
There are edibles. There's no reason why I should be smelling your shit. So that, and then talking about smelling shit. So we're on the second floor. On the fourth floor, there's a resident who hasn't been there in over 9 months, which means that for 9 months, they haven't been running their water. They haven't been flushing their toilets.
God.
And for those of you who might not be in the know, what that leads to is backups, and it leads to my bathroom smelling like raw sewage, right? So all of that, while my wife and I are rooming with a 1-year-old, right, in a 1-bedroom apartment, it's time to go. And then I don't think I have time to get into it here, but if you follow me on Locals, you will see the video I shared of a run-in I had with a neighbor who I've had problems with before, who followed me up to my apartment because I wasn't wearing a mask inside the apartment. And this dude was every other word out of his mouth is, "Where's your mask? Why aren't you wearing your mask?" Like yelling. And I was calling this dude every single foul thing you possibly could. Rightfully so, because this was a grown ass man who followed me from the elevator to an apartment. And I'm like, yo, it is time. It is such the right time for me to get the hell out of here and to start my new life. And you know what? I kind of like the corny stuff. I like the idea of fireworks and the turkey trot on Thanksgiving, the 5K turkey trot, and also I got to say, to see my son, who's now walking, now have room to roam, to walk around. Not only is it a pleasure to see as a dad, but also his demeanor has changed too.
Right.
And he's enjoying it. And I'm like, you know what? That's it. That's
what happens when you become a parent. I'm doing my podcast is Just Listen to Yourself, as you mentioned at the top, and I'm doing a series of mini episodes on that podcast, which you will be on, Lou. You're going to be on not the next one. This first series of mini episodes is an interview with my father-in-law, who is a wonderful and one of the wisest men I've ever known. So we're going through that, and then the wonderful Lou Perez will have a mini-sode there. But we talked about parenting on our last episode, and he raised 4 kids, 3 boys and a girl, in Gary, Indiana. And unfortunately, the 2 oldest boys have passed away since then. But he raised them all to adulthood, and we talked about how there is this idea these days that a baby is the worst thing that can happen to you. Like, it's just going to be a total bummer. You're not going to be able to travel. You're not going to be able to do all the things that you love to do. You're going to lose your independence, whatever. And when you have a kid, you finally realize, oh no, this is the thing. This is the thing. Yeah. Everything else was the thing leading up to the thing. But the thing is the kids, because it changes you in a way that you do not expect. So and one can be like, yeah, I could be content in suburbia. Like I could make that work. Not because you're like, I want to be a boring nerd guy and just do like boring suburban stuff, because all of a sudden you're looking at your living situation through your kids' eyes. You can tolerate a lot, But when for your kid, no, I don't want my kid to grow up in a box in New York City. I want to see him run around and giggle and throw a ball. And I'm thinking, Lou, because we've been friends, we're friends, right?
Sure. Yeah.
We've been friends for a number of years now. So I've watched you go through, get married and then have kids. And I'm thinking about this Facebook thread from you once that I read that has always stuck in my mind for some reason. I was like, when Lou becomes a parent, I'm going to ask him about this thread. So you were on Facebook being comedian Lou, and you posted this article. It was a video of a dad greeting his daughter's boyfriend at the door with like a shotgun or something. And it's like a jokey video, but he's like, you can't go out with it's one of them, like, just know if you take my daughter out, I know how 5 different forms of martial arts and that cutesy daddy thing. And you were saying on this thread, like this is disgusting in a funny way though, by the way. I'm not as funny as Lou. I can't really read it, but you're like, this is so dumb. This is like this is an example of like patriarchal attitudes. Is like this dad thinks his daughter.
He owns her.
And he basically wants to F his daughter or whatever. Something edgy Lou.
Yeah, I can imagine. I wrote that. Yeah.
Yes. And so I got on the thread because I was interested in seeing all the comments. I got on the thread and I said, I think that this is a very non-parental point of view because, like, first of all, I am a parent. I want to know that my husband is intimidating towards my daughter, any males that have interest in my daughter, because I know what boys can do, and I know how boys can treat girls. And then as someone who grew up for most of my life without a dad, I also found that attractive. Like, oh, this is something I've always wanted, like to have a protective.
I'm remembering that this is from a while back, but
it's from a long time ago. It's something that always stuck in my craw, and I've always wanted to ask you about this. So now's my opportunity. Now that you are a parent, has your view on that kind of stuff shifted? You just gave me chills. Yeah.
Really? Yeah. This is what. No, I wasn't expecting that, but it is jogging my memory, and I got to say, I'm going to say 100% my opinion on that has changed. And if I were to go back, I would, probably do a better job of explaining how it's changed. But I was thinking about it a little while back with my son, where I've been in love, right? I've been in romantic love. I'm in love with my wife. I love my wife. I have the love of friendships. My best man at my wedding. I have another best friend since high school. I know what that love is. I know what the love is for my dad. I know what the love is for my mom. I've never experienced this kind of love before that I have for my child. Yeah. It is a different, it's a different thing. I have never held babies. Before the way I hold him and don't want to let go. I can't get enough of hugging him and all that. It's a different love. And when my wife and I were, as I told you before, we're expecting another child. It's a boy on the way. So you were part of one of 5 boys. Now you're creating your own stable. Okay, good for you. But I could only imagine what it would be like if I had a daughter, and what that love would be like for my daughter. But I think I think you're right. There are certain things when people say it that you're like, I don't think you obviously haven't had kids. Well, it's almost like, and I might have to leave it here just because on time. When I was in high school, I used to write poetry. Right. And I used to write poetry, some of it sexual, so I used to write poems about sex without ever having had sex. So, man, I want to crack open that composition notebook and read what little Lou thinks sex was all about before. Do you have it? Do you have anything? Yeah, I have it at my parents. It's in like a safe. Please go get it. I gotta crack that open. But But Kira, thank you so much for spending time with me. Please, guys, you got to check out, you got to follow Kira, you got to check out her work, and check out her podcast and all that. She's fantastic, and I'm so happy we were able to catch up.
All right. Thank you so much, Lou.
Thank you so much for watching and or listening to my podcast. If you'd like to support my work, please head over to thelouperez.locals.com and join the Lou Perez community. And another way to support me is by supporting my sponsors. Black Organic Cold Brew. Head over to www.blvckbrew.com. Use promo code LOU for free shipping. And if you're into CBD products, please check out palomaverdecbd.com. Use promo code LOU for 25% off purchases over $75. All right. Bye.